Good evening and welcome to the third round of the Sim Racing Online Porsche 935 USA Cup. It's always a mouthful, always very difficult, but we get there in the end. Right, round 3 of this championship. We're now at Barber Motorsports Park. A very hilly, lots of elevation change, lots of blind crests. It's going to be very difficult in these old-ish cars from the 70s. But we are set for 60 minutes of racing around this twisty and bumpy Barber Motorsports Park, which currently holds the IndyCar Series, the GT World Challenge, the Trans Am Series. It's a very twisty, very bumpy track. So, what's the story so far? So we've had 2 rounds so far. 2 rounds of this championship. Our first was in Road America, which was a very interesting 60 minutes. We had a mixed up grid. We had a couple of people underestimating their engine wear and blowing an engine. And so we had some quite good results from a few. Unfortunately, a couple of people would spin on the last lap, giving away podium places. So for our second round, we went to what was a completely different track, which was Portland International Raceway. And completely flat this time. So we head to Barber Motorsports Park now, which is a completely different type of track in comparison. But if we look at the story so far, so we are using the Porsche 935. Quite a powerful car. You can see the lovely Jägermeister paint job there, and it has a lock diff, so rumbling over the curbs is not the best plan. But as I say, we are at Barber Motorsports Park, used by IndyCar. 15 turns. I'm not sure there's going to be many chances to go completely flat out around some of these turns like the IndyCars do, but so we're going to have to be. I believe it would be a confidence-based circuit. Let's just put it that way. You're going to have to trust the car that it's going to actually stick through some of these turns. But we are using the 2015 layout. I don't believe it's actually changed in layout at all, but we are using what it looked like in 2015. So, as far as the championship goes, we have had, I believe, 2 separate winners in this championship so far. Robin Taylor has got 1 win, and Tony Talviti took the win at Portland. So, at the moment, Robin Taylor leads the championship by 10 points from Bjorn Hagman, with Barrett Eriksson just not far behind, just 1 extra point behind Bjorn Hagman in 3rd. And Nick Westy is only a couple of points further back in 4th, with Rob Milliken 5th, on equal points with Edward Jones. And then Ken Jagger 10 points back in 7th. Tony Talviti in 8th. Thomas Johansson, actually the creator of this Porsche mod, he's joined us for this series. And rounding out the top 10, we have Philip Pitchler. So, what are we in for tonight? What are we in for tonight? 60 minutes of racing, that's what we're in for. And it's a very cold track temperature of, or ebb temperature of about just under 13 degrees, with a track temperature of 25 degrees. So that should prove difficult getting the tyres up to temperature. But the cars are out on track at the moment, so the track temperature should get a little easier, or warmer rather. So let's get back. Let's get out on track and show you some of the action so far. So all cars are out on the track so far. It is Nick Westy setting the pace as we cut to him having a major oversteer moment and another oversteer moment. Maybe trying out different heights of wing, and probably that's not the one to go for. We do have a team championship in this series. At the moment, Black Cat Motorsports are leading the team championship, which consists of Nick Westy and Robin Taylor. But we have another team up for the championship, which is Bad Voices Racing. That's a very interesting way to go through the chicane, Mr. Ericsson. So Bad Voices Racing consists of Ken Jagger, Edward Jones and Barrett Ericsson. So they're not far behind in second. And I believe there is Flying Crowbar Racing. There's only one driver, which is Robert Milliken in the pits at the moment, flying the flag for Flying Crowbar Racing. So let's see what happens. I believe that we did see a good battle between Rob Milliken and other drivers at Portland. Good swapping places with, I believe it was Barrett Ericsson and a couple of other drivers. But you see how bumpy the track is, and obviously how little grip on the outside of the turns there are. So we're just in practice at the moment. We are going to be heading to Collie in about 5 minutes time. So if we're going to go on board with Ken Jagger up one of the back front straights, so maybe you'd call it. Ooh, hold on to it, Ken. Not quite. Not quite. Not quite. There we go. Out of the hairpin and down the short straight heading. Down the short straight heading up to the what is probably one of the most difficult corners to see. It is very slow speed, but it's a, can you call it a chicane when you're just going straight through it? I'm not so sure. Pretty fast left right up towards another fast left right, but this time going dipping down and coming over a blind crest into the final sequence of corners for turns 14. Then down the hill, it's literally a roller coaster. Oh, as we see, Ken take another trip into the barrier, literally into the barrier. So it's like a roller coaster. You come, I wonder what it's like in real life coming over these crests. I imagine your stomach goes light as we go on board with Robin Taylor coming over the line. And we drop down into turn 1, taking a lot of curb and then a blind crest for 2. Seems like it seems like it never ends. Turn 2 and turn 3, and through a slight turn for 4, and then down the hill for what is maybe a right angle turn for 5. Slight turn 6, and up to what is a blind chicane, having to pick where that second apex is. Up short straight to turns 9 and 10. And another short straight over to the other side of the track. Down, and then over a short crest for 12. Taking all the curb. And into 13. And pick where you want to brake for 14. And then dip right down for 15. And then over the line for another lap. It looks very, very slippy out there. Not a lot of grip on the track. I don't know if that's because of the cold temperatures or just the way these cars are. Not dealing with the elevation changes too much. But we do have Nick Westy setting the pace at 120.9. It's currently in the pits at the moment, so 120.9. All the other drivers do have a little bit of work to do. See Barrett Ericsson coming through the dip chicane. None of the corners actually have any names, which makes it extra confusing. But in a high downforce car, this track is absolutely immense. But with these older 1970s Porsches, it's proving a little bit more difficult with the traction of the rear. And I imagine that probably just need to stick all of the downforce on the rear wing and then hang on for dear life. I'm sure a lot of people are testing maybe their more conservative setups in practice. We still have yet to go to quali. Barrett Ericsson doing a 124.0. So as I say, there's been two winners in the first two rounds, two separate winners. Robin Taylor took the first round and Tony Talviti took the second in a very dominant win at Portland. Nick Westy wasn't too far behind, but he couldn't quite get on terms with Tony Talviti. Pit strategy did come into play in round 1 for Road America, but there weren't any pit stops for round 2. So I'm wondering whether people have found that it's much easier just to save the tyres for the entire 60 minutes. As we see Tony Talviti just coming out the pits for a practice lap. He's got a couple of minutes just to get his eye in. Tony is normally on the pace. We were expecting about 9 drivers today, but unfortunately we are struggling. There may be a few people with some technical problems, I have read. Hopefully they can get their problems sorted. We did see a few times when there was lockings of tyres. It doesn't seem to affect these drivers too much. But there are plenty of straights on this track. Whether they are long enough to actually get a run on the car in front, I'm not too sure. You won't be making any passing moves through the very quick left and right chicanes as we head to quali. So we saw from practice a 120.9 was the pace. We'll see if other drivers will be slapping on their qualification setups and maybe going even quicker than a 120. But we'll see. So line up at the pit exit and onto their first lap of qualifying. It's only a 10-minute qualification session, so not long to get a lap in. Whether or not people decide to do one run and then come back in the pits, because of course the rules of sim racing online are that you do an out lap, you do your fast lap, and then you have to do an in lap. It makes it feel a bit more authentic. So I believe that it is Nick Westy out the gate first. He wants a clear track in front of him. He's taking it very, very steady on his first out lap, not wanting to particularly push at all. We'll see how many laps these drivers do through the last couple of turns. A lot of understeer, it looks like, in that final turn there. Doesn't look like the tyres are up to temperature. Down the hill 4-1. Run too wide and then really backing it into turns 2 and 3. Over the crest and down towards what feels like a hairpin of turn 5. He's got the car very, very loose. I wonder whether that is the fastest way around here. Drifting, it seems. To the blind chicane. Down the hill. Two turns, quick turn 9 and 10. A lot of commitment on that turn into sector 3. Again, a lot of commitment coming down the hill to actually brake in at the bottom of that valley, I suppose, keeping it tight for turns 14 and 15. Let's see what a lot of understeer in that last turn. It's just not turning at all. And across the line for the first time of the session, which is a 121.7. As you see, Barrett Ericsson just came over the line for a 121. No, in fact, not a 121, a 123.6. Tony Talviti has just gone to first with a 120.9, so Tony Talviti is on the pace. As we see Ken Jagger out on his fast lap. Down towards the hairpin. I mean, it doesn't look like a hairpin, but it feels like a hairpin. All these turns seem to drop away from you. You see a car ahead getting out of the way, either on their out lap or their in lap. Slightly loose by Ken coming out of that chicane and onto 103, I believe. Short straights. Or is it? It's 5, maybe 5 short straights at Barber Motorsports Park. Down the hill and then over the crest. Trying to stay off that curb. I'm sure that grass will just suck you off the track and into the barrier. Down for 14 and 15, trying not to spin up the wheels. Even slightly wide. And that will be a 124.9. Ericsson is personal best in sector 1, slightly down in sector 2. That's not going to push him up at all. He must have made a mistake on that lap, because he didn't improve in the second sector, the third sector either. I think that Ed Jones may be sitting the qualification out. He normally runs from the back. He's currently in the pits. But as we join our round 1 winner, having a little bit off, he did do personal best in his first sector. Unfortunately, he must have been pushing a little too hard. Let's see if he can get on terms with his teammate on the front row currently. Running a touch wide. Gosh, it's bumpy off the edge of the circuit there. I don't think drivers are going to want to be wanted to do that. He's abandoned that lap. Coming into the pits. As you see, Ken Jagger just running off on the final turn. He's going to need to go for another lap. Just under 4 minutes to go. I believe he's may have steering damage, perhaps. Seems very strange heading into the barrier there. Slightly wide on the exit of that turn, heading down towards the hairpin that drops away from you, or the corner that drops away from you. There's going to be a lot of people that are locking tyres going into that turn. So personal best in sector 1. Down towards the blind chicane, left, right. Bury the car in and try and get on the throttle as early as possible. And one of these short straights, not really going to be enough room to pass down there. But getting a good exit out of here. Going to have to be very brave if anyone decides to go too wide. Personal best in sector 2. May beat his personal best of a 124.9. He's currently 4th at the moment. So 124.5 he improves, but doesn't improve his position. So you see Per Eriksson on an outlap. It looks like a lot of people have just done one fast lap, and that is it. Lovely blue livery of this Porsche. It does look like we've lost one driver. Doesn't look like Rob Milliken is taking part in qualifying. This is a shame. It does actually look like the car gets a little bit of air coming over these blind crests. That's a very wide line coming into 14. It is an outlap, but pushing on to a new lap. So we've just over 1 minute to go. It's Talviti in first, Nick Westy in second, Taylor in third, Jagger fourth, Eriksson, who we're looking at the moment, is in fifth, and Ed Jones, without a time, currently in sixth. That does actually look like a lot of drivers are sitting it out. Again, Taylor is trying to improve. Personal best in the first sector, slightly down on his personal best in the second as he comes through the final turn. And a 123.0. Improves his time, but not his position. He's actually the fastest car in the final sector, with only 24 seconds of qualifying to go. Tony Talviti just gets across the line to start another lap. He already has pole by 0.6 of a second, which is a hell of a gap to second place. Does he just want to rub it in for this final run? Needs all the track time he can get, probably. Down into the left-hander of 5, up the short straight. Can't really call it a straight, really. Down the hill, locking the tyres, coming on entry. Keeping it very tight towards the curb. Stamping on the throttle up the short straight. Quick left, right. Try and not to run wide. He's actually down on his pole time in the first sector. Not by much though. And down in the second sector. Looks like he may not improve. There isn't anyone else on track at the moment that can knock him off the top. So it looks like we have our grid set for 60 minutes of racing at Barber Motorsports Park. So a good final sector for Tony. So let's look at the grid. So our starting order is as follows. Tony Talviti, last time out winner, lines up first with Westy in second. Taylor in third. Jagger in fourth. Ericsson in fifth. Ed Jones in sixth. And that is our starting order. It does look like we were expecting Rob Milliken to come back in the session. He may be able to join in warm-up, because we've got a 5-minute warm-up to go. Hopefully he's able to rejoin the server in time. But now we are set for 60 minutes of racing around Barber Motorsports Park. 15 turns. Very cold track temperature for the time being. Whether it raised itself. No, we're still running at about 13 degrees and 19 degrees track temperature. After 60 minutes of racing, the track temperature should rise a significant amount. So are we going to have a new winner for our third round? Pole sitter and our round 2 winner, Tony Talviti. Does look like he has a pace advantage with Westy in second. How aggressive does Westy want to go this time? It does look like this track may be a tyre eater, considering how much we saw drivers battling with the trying to keep the rear end stable. But as I say, put all the downforce on this car and hope that you can get a run on the driver in front. There are short straights to be able to pass, but whether or not they're long enough to get a run. Many of these turns are a one-line corner too, so drivers are going to have to be very, very careful with how they go into these turns side by side. I'm unsure whether we're going to see much side-by-side action. But I do wonder whether the pace of the race might be quite slow, considering how many turns there are on this track that eat the tyres. Seeing a couple of people doing practice starts at the end of pit lane. It is a standing start. So we'll see who's going to get off the line first. Pole should be on the right hand side. And I mean, even if Tony doesn't get a good start, and he can probably stay around the outside. He's got the line for turn 2 up the hill. But we'll see how aggressive people want to go. We're not expecting any pit stops. There are no mandatory pit stops, but we'll see whether anyone has to pit because of tyre wear from all of the sideways action. It may come into play, so starting at the back and playing it by ear, playing the long game might be the way to do it. So this is the halfway point in the series. We do have 2 more rounds to go. 3 more rounds to go. I can't I can't do maths apparently. So we have Laguna Seca on the 16th of February, and we do take a month's break, and we're back for round 5 at Road Atlanta, and then the bumpiness of Sebring International Raceway on the 30th of March. So I wonder how these cars will deal with the bumps of Sebring. So we have just under a minute of warm up. Drivers doing their last final checks. Trying to think in their head about strategy. How am I going to manage 60 minutes around this track when other cars are in the way as well? It's sometimes very easy to do fast laps around these tracks, but when you have other racers that are battling over the same piece of tarmac, it certainly focuses your mind. But we'll see who's going to make it around turn 1 in one piece. Hopefully everybody. It's been very clean so far in this series. We don't want to see any incidents. The stewards don't want to get involved. I think on the first lap that this chicane is going to prove very, very difficult. Going to really have to be wary of all the cars around you. The bumps are going to prove very, very difficult for all drivers involved. As we head to the grid, you see Tony is lining up on pole. Not long now until the green flag. We'll head down the road into turn 1. Off we go. Good start by all involved. Robin's the first one to pull out. And Nick Westy does overtake around the outside into turn 1. Good jump. It does look like we're clean through turns 1 and 2. Up the hill for the first lap. How aggressive do they want to be? As it's Tony Talviti now chasing Nick Westy for first. It's a complete topsy-turvy from Portland. Nick Westy was trying to do everything to pass Tony Talviti at Portland, but now the roles are reversed. How aggressive do we want to go? Head down into the bumpy chicane for the first time. Really quick left and right. It does look like Nick Westy is streaking away from the rest of the pack. So we head back to battle for 4th and 5th. It's Ken Jagger and Ericsson, who are actually teammates. So team orders, does that come into play? Ken Jagger slightly wagging the rear of that Porsche, coming onto the straight and completing the first lap around. Nick Westy out on his own, trying to pull a gap. First lap 1:28.0. We have Talviti not far behind. We'll have to keep an eye on these lap times to see what kind of pace that these drivers are putting in. Back in the pack. 3rd place, Taylor. Down the chicane, over the crests of the chicane. Ken Jagger with Barrett Ericsson in behind. Ed Jones out the back. Maybe playing it safe. Always tends to play the long game. But it's Jagger in front of Barrett Ericsson that I'm keeping my eye on at the moment. They are the closest on track. As we go downhill for another lap. As Nick Westy puts in a fastest lap time of 1:22.1. Not far off the qualification times. As Ken Jagger opens the throttle and over the blind crest. Down towards turn 5. Westy has opened up a 2.3 lead in just the opening few minutes of this race. So is Westy going aggressive this time? We did see Westy really hanging the back out in qualifying. It looks no different. Is this a strategy? Putting out the gap enough for a pit stop? Talviti is matching in the 122s. So Westy crosses the line for a 121.9, getting quicker and quicker. With Tony Talviti not far behind on a 122.3. So as the rubber goes down, the cars are steadily getting quicker. Quali time was around 120 to 121. So we head them back to third place. Robin Taylor on his own. Although championship leader at the moment, he can afford to just take it easy in third. I believe one of the recent championships that he won, one of the 6 race series that he won, he didn't win, but it was just his consistency throughout the entire season that won him the championship. Ken Jagger a little bit further back, putting in a little bit of a slower pace on a 125. Very similar to his teammate Barrett Ericsson and Ed Jones. Ed Jones has now passed Barrett Ericsson, so I wonder whether Barrett Ericsson had a problem. It does look like Ken Jagger had a little bit of a problem there. Talviti has put in a quicker lap time of 120.21.8. So he is on the pace, not letting Westy get away. The gap is only 2.5 seconds. Backing it into turn 5. No sign of any locked tyres at all. We head towards this blind chicane over the hill, down. Trying to get on the throttle as early as possible. He has a carrot ahead to chase of Westy. Over the crest and try not to run wide onto the grass because it will just suck you into the Armco. Turn 13 and 14. Wider line for 14. Down the hill of the roller coaster. And across the line for another lap. It does look like Ken Jagger and his teammate behind, Ed Jones, running line astern. So it looks like whoever keeps their wheels in line at the moment is going to prevail. So 52 minutes of this race to go. It's a long way to go in this race. We have Westy in first, putting in a lap time of 121.2. Salviti is not far behind. Salviti seems to be faster at certain parts of the circuit, because that gap goes up to about 3 seconds, but can easily come down to 2.5. And then we have Taylor in third, a very lonely third at the moment, 12 seconds off the leader, putting in lap times of 1:23. So is this playing the long game? He does get it a little bit crossed up coming out of that turn. Some of these turns do seem to fall away from you, particularly coming down into 15. Maybe a little bit off camber. Fourth place, Ken Jagger, with his teammate Ed Jones not far behind. Down into turn 1. All 3 teammates within the same straight there. I wonder what happened to Barrett Eriksson. I didn't see any particular drop-offs. He did do a lap time recently of a 1:27, so maybe he had a little bit of an excursion. As we head back to the front, Westy still leads. Last lap at 1:21.2. We'll see if that pace is going to drop off at all. Down into the final turn. It's look like that car is four-wheel drifting. And Tony can see the car of the leader. Slight drop in pace. The gap has opened out to about 3.5 seconds. Slightly slower lap. But they're staying in the 1:21s. As Robin Taylor continues his steady pace in the 1:23.5 range. Down into that turn 5. Drops down away from you and then rises up towards the chicane at the end of the straight. Ken Jagger dropping down off into 5 as we speak. Slight oversteer on exit. It's not the tail of that Porsche is like a dog wagging its tail. So we're going board with Ed Jones. You can see his teammate just ahead, setting the pace. Now lap time's down to 1:24. Very, very ginger over the crest. I wonder if those poles actually can be knocked over. So, I think once they disappear, it's going to be very difficult to see where the corner apex is. We did say the lead was opening out to 3.5 seconds. It's now come down by half a second, so that it's fluctuating. It's just a matter of who can keep the tyres on their car, I believe. Who's going to have the best tyre wear? I believe that Wesley's Porsche came fully off the ground over that crest. He does seem to be backing it into the turn quite a lot. I wonder whether that's either going to shred his tyres We may build a big enough gap, a big enough buffer, if you will. Savretti comes through turns 1 and 2. He's keeping it tidy. Slight bit of oversteer coming through turn 2 and turn 3. Over the crest on 4. Down towards 5. No locking of tyres. Flat spots will not be your friend on this track, I would imagine. Taylor coming up to 5. Taking a very tight line on entry into turn 5. A slight oversteer coming out of 5. Stepping on the loud pedal a bit much there. I guess those poles aren't a physics object, so they won't disappear if someone hits them, thankfully. And Jagger does look like he's pulled a gap on his teammate behind. Just came on his camera shot as they come through that narrow chicane. Can't really call it a chicane, it's just a right-hander really. Over the blind crest, down into what feels like a valley, and up the hill again for turns 14 and 15. Pace of the leaders is staying in the 121 range, so they are setting a blistering pace. With the other drivers behind in the 124s and 5s. So it is between the top 2 at the moment. And 45 minutes to go. We'll have to see whether, maybe at half distance, we'll see for definite whether there are going to be pit stops. Unfortunately, we can't see tyre wear statistics or anything, so... See, Westy is backing it into some of these turns. I don't know whether that's going to prove difficult at the end of the race. The rear end maybe it's too slippy in the end. Taufiti is keeping him in sight. The gap has now gone up to 4.7 seconds, as Westy does put in a fastest lap time of 1:20.8 now. Still, the closest battle on track is between 4th and 5th. Ken Jagger with Ed Jones not far behind. Coming into and out of the final turn. So Ken Jagger setting the pace for Ed Jones. It does look like Ericsson behind Ed Jones is dropping away a little. He's now 5 seconds behind. Every single one of them are on 1:24 pace. 3rd, 4th, 5th and 6th have now settled into the 1:24s. As we cut to Robin Taylor just having a little bit of an off. Maybe trying to push the tyres more than they need to be pushed at this point in the race. But the top 2 have streaked away from the rest of the field, leaving the rest to pick up the scraps. We can possibly do a little bit of maths here. So Tony Tauviti last time out was the winner last time out. But currently running in 2nd. So first place Westy would get 40 points, 4-0 for first. Tony Tauviti would get 36 for second. Not 26, 36. I can type. And then we have, currently in third at the moment, our championship leader would receive 33 points. So we would have 1 win and 2 third places. Ed Jones, we've missed a pass. I believe Ken Jagger must have had an off here because Ed Jones is now up to 4th place. And Ken Jagger now down to 5th with his teammate not far behind. Or Barrett Eriksson. There must have been a mistake by Ken Jagger. We'll see when the lap times come through. So Ed Jones now up to 4th place, which would be a solid 30 points for Ed Jones. Ed Jagger in 5th place would receive 28 points. And Barrett Eriksson in 6th would be 26 points. We head up to the lead. The gap has now come down a little to 3.5 seconds. Westy still is riding over the curbs. Very aggressive. Kind of in contrast to Tony. 2 different approaches to the same fast lap time. Tony's still in the 121 range. Westy has dropped down to about 122. Maybe an anomaly. So if my numbers are correct at this point in time, Robin Taylor would still be leading the championship. Nick Westy, his teammate, would have moved up to 2nd, with Barrett Eriksson up into 3rd. So a race like this with a limited number of drivers, it does mean that some of well, it's easier to pick up a few more points than you would usually. Hopefully we'll have a few more coming back next week. That's a lot of curb that Taylor is taking. Taylor's now upped his pace to a 122.7. So he's now getting quicker and quicker as the race goes on. It does look like Barrett Eriksson has now dropped off the rear of Ken Jagger. I wonder whether he must have made a mistake. Last lap time of 136. It does look like cut to him just as he has a moment coming out of the chicane. He was just lapped by the leader, and that was Talviti going through. So it doesn't look like Eriksson is having the greatest of days, but he's going to pick up quite a few points for 6th place if he sticks with it. Tony Talviti is continuing his lap time of 121.6. Very consistent lap times. As we have 38 minutes to go in this race. This series does actually share Sunday nights with the IndyCar series. Sim Racing Online has an IndyCar series that alternates with the Porsche 935 Cup. So next week it will be the the IndyCar's turn. So the Dallara IR 18 2025 Cup, as it's called. So they've already headed to Surfers Paradise and Mid-Ohio last week. Next week, on February 9th, they will be at Road America. So both championships are taking place on very similar tracks in the US. The Indy cars are slightly faster than these Porsche 935s. The IndyCar series is quite well attended, with 25 drivers on track last time, I believe. These cars are proving more difficult. It did look like Westy had a wheel on the curve there. I thought that this car was going to go round. Back in the 121s. So it does look like that 122 was maybe an anomaly. So down the chute, chicane onto the back straight for Tau VT. Particular dramas coming through the fast turn, the roller coaster, if you will. Robin Taylor, after that mistake back in the 125s, but he still will lead this championship if he keeps it where it is. With 35 minutes to go, is anyone tempted to be the first one to pit? I think drivers may have got a handle on their tyre wear after the first round. And we did find that this car can be very fragile if you overdo the redlining. Or even close the radiator too much. You don't want to overheat this beast. Jones coming through the fast left-right chicane near the end of the lap. Over the crest of 14. Down towards turn 15, the left-hander. That was Ed Jones, with Ken Jagger just finishing the lap behind. Drivers seem to have settled into their pace. Robin Taylor again seems to have upped his pace to a 122. As we see Ken Jagger just running a bit wide at turn 1. These bumps are proving a little bit difficult for these cars. And Barrett Ericsson having the greatest of times out in 6th place. Just needs to keep it going. Consistency is the key in this series. There's a few drivers not able to attend tonight. Just seeing that a few drivers did have a few technical problems, as expected. We did see Rob Milliken popping in and out, so that may have been some internet problems. They've been literally internet weather problems. Westy still leads around about half distance. Up to lap a car. I believe that's Ken Jagger in front. Ken Jagger throwing up the dust a little coming out of turn 1. Not quite into 4th gear. Down to 1st, that sounds awful for the engine. Up into 2nd, into 3rd. Up towards the chicane, braking a lot harder than Ken. Through the left. Down the hill, up towards the right. Bumping over these curbs. Really hanging about. Does seem to be going down to 1st. Whether or not you need to go down to 1st, but there's a lot of understeer coming out that final turn. As we saw in qualifying. See Ken Jagger just running off the road in the background there. He's about to be lapped by 2nd place Tony. The gap for 1st and 2nd has opened up to about 5 seconds. Pace is still around the 121 mark. Looks like Talviti is going to catch Ken at the same point on the circuit as Westy did. Coming down into the chicane. And onto this short straight. Ken lifts off a little, letting 2nd place Talviti through. Good drive in there. Taylor still in a very, very solid 3rd place. He's now 47 seconds behind the leader. It's a very steady pace from Robin. Reach half distance. As he takes an interesting line into the chicane. He's braking a little bit wrong and can't quite correct it in time, so over the grass you go. Ed Jones now in 4th, about to be lapped by Westy just behind. Locking of tyres coming into the down chicane. Westy overtakes coming into the left and the right. I didn't think Ed Jones would want to go too wide through there. And Jagger on his way to a 5th place finish at the moment. So 3rd, 4th and 5th are in the 124 lap time range. Barber Ericsson has now found a little bit more pace into the 123s that last lap. He is now 37 seconds behind 5th place. Did look ahead. I was about to say I think that might be Nick Westy here, but in fact it's Ed Jones. I got confused with the dark coloured car. That is Tony Talviti just lapping Ed Jones. With 27 minutes to go. Last lap time for Tony Talviti was a 1:20.9, so still at half distance, still a lot of tyre life left. So whether or not this is the 30-minute push. Whether or not Westy has still got the tyres left to remain in the 121 range. Robin Taylor does look like he may have dropped off the circuit. Last lap time of 1:31. He is pretty much out on his own at the moment. 56 seconds behind the leader, and the next car is 25 seconds down the road. Over the crest into the final part of this lap. Keep it as tight as possible. Ooh, slight bit of understeer coming into 14. Down the hill to 15. Not as much understeer as Westy there. So maybe playing it a little bit safe with scrubbing the tyres. Jones does the same kind of line coming into that final complex. Fastest lap time for Tony Talviti, a 1:20.5, so he is pushing on. We'll have to see whether Westy can up his pace to match. But this last 25-minute push, has he left it too late? Is 30 minutes, 25 minutes enough? He can still see a very faint car just in front. He does seem to now be more aggressive on the brakes. Gear changes don't sound too great for the engine, but we'll have to see whether it actually has any problems with the engine a bit later on. So see as he crosses the line, what kind of lap time will he be doing this time? 1:20.5 last time. 1:21.4, so quite as fast as he was, so it was a quick sprint. See what is actually possible, but still 5 seconds to catch up in 25 minutes. Field pretty spread out. Nick Westy just up the road. He's within reach, but still. So he can't really let off the gas with only a 5-second buffer, which maybe is going to come down a little. He seems to be the only driver that is really being aggressive with most of these curbs. I had suspected that this car would not like the bumps of this circuit too much because of its differential, but I think Westy must have found a little bit of a sweet spot between slip and traction. Keeping an eye on that gap, it's now 4.5 seconds. Is that Ericsson? That's Ericsson around again. Unfortunately having the worst day today at Barber Motorsports Park. It's proving very, very difficult. And this is Westy just behind I think to put another lap on Ericsson. I can't imagine those tyres are going to be feeling very nice at all. As he passes Ericsson for the second time. So just checking the points situation. Let's have a look. So, as it currently stands, Robin Taylor still would lead the championship after this race, with Nick Westy moving up to second in the championship. Tony Tauviti, because missing a one of the rounds at the start, would now only be in 5th place in the championship. This goes to show that consistency in these championships are key. "21 minutes to go." See Robin Taylor coming over the hill at the end of the lap. Solidly in the 122s now for quite some time. Not able to match the early pace of the leaders. They were able to streak away at the beginning of this race and have not looked back. But Ed Jones now in 4th place. Started from the back of the field. And steadily made his way up past his teammate into 4th place. Unfortunately, a few mistakes from his teammate Ken Jagger has dropped him down. Doesn't feel as confident over those curbs as the leaders do, I'd imagine. And Ericsson bringing up what is the rear in 6th place. Not having the greatest of evenings at Barber Motorsports Park. So the lead now, is it stabilised at 4 seconds? We have just under 20 minutes to go. Tauviti would need to chip away at this lead. I don't imagine passing is going to be very easy here. So he needs to at least get on terms with Westy, who is now staying within sight on the main straight. But have these drivers now run out of rubber? Have they run out of tyres to be able to push that extra 1/10 of a second? I want to go beyond the limit of grip and throw it all away. Westy is not out of sight just yet, so the carrot is still being chased by Tauviti. As we come down through the chicane. Right, left, right. Up towards the curb of quick chicane. Slight brake. Brake again in the dip up towards turn 14. Tyre scrubbing all the way until 14. Keeping an apex. Tony's got a lot of understeer in that final turn as well. So lap times have now dipped to the 1:22s for the leaders. Back in third place, Robin Taylor is now solidly in the 1:22s. But at the moment he is 69 seconds behind the leader. But consistency will be key if he is to take another championship in Sim Racing Online. So if we look at some of the stats of these drivers. So Nick Westy has made overall 90 starts, of which 27 have been first, 21 been second, and 11 third. He ranks in 10th position. Am I reading that right? Maybe, maybe not. Recent championships, he won the WEC Championship in 2024 in the hypercar. Tony Tauviti always there or thereabouts. The gap is now down to 3 seconds. So one final push. Tony Tauviti from Finland has done 436 events at Sim Racing Online, so taking part in pretty much everything. He's currently taking part in the Assetto Corsa GT60 Championship and the GT4 Challenge. He recently won the Metal Moro MR1 Sprint Championship with the Alfa Romeo 155 Summer Series Championship. Gap now down to 2.5 seconds. So maybe gave the tyres a little bit of a rest with just under 15 minutes to go. Gave the tyres a little bit of a breather and now pushing on for another go at chipping away that gap. Robin Taylor still plugging away in third. Teammate is just behind. Just about the lap. Put a lap on third place. Westy and Tauviti have been dominating this race. As we can see, Tauviti getting closer and closer and closer, and I think Westy feels the pressure. This is getting slightly sideways coming out of these turns now. Gap is now down to 2 seconds. So we're going to have a grandstand finish near the end. Tony is as close as he has ever been. Saving a little bit of tyre in reserve to be able to do this final push at the end. Will lap cars come into play at all? I don't think they will, because there are enough short straights to let the leaders by. As Robin Taylor gets way out of the way of these two, battling for first and second. We may even see the gap go down to just under 2 seconds by the end of the lap. Turns 14. Up on top of the hill and then dip down to 15. A lot of understeer for that final turn. Looks like maybe Westy has pulled a little bit more of a gap. Let's see how he's keeping that rear end under control. It does look now a bit untidy. Pushing on worn tyres. Can't imagine that this car is liking this very much. Slight lock of the left front tyre coming into turn 5. Pushing on, and Tony is getting closer and closer. Now down to 1.7 seconds. All it would take would be a tiny little bit of a mistake. Bumping over these curbs. A little bit wide. Losing a little bit of momentum. To the end of the lap. Backing it into turn 14. Down the hill for 15 onto the main straight for another lap. 11 minutes to go. Like Nick Westy has probably taken a little bit of a look in the mirror there. Tauriti puts a fastest lap of the race of 1:20.4. Gap now down to 1.6 seconds. We may yet see fireworks by the end of this race. It's been a slow burner, but we're going to see some fireworks hopefully at the end of this race. Down to 1.5 seconds. Sector by sector. Taking chunks out of Westy's lead. Quicker in the first sector by a tenth of a second. Coming up towards the second sector. Quicker again by 1/10 of a second. 10 minutes to go. And through the final couple of corners. Tauriti's really got the bit between his teeth. Finally pushing on across the line for another lap. Bit of a dead heat for sector 3. Gap being 1.5 seconds. We'll have to see whether draft is going to prove difficult around this track. And I imagine there's going to be a lot of aero push behind a faster car. Nine minutes to go. Gap now down to 1.3 seconds. Is Westy feeling the pressure? Slight bit of oversteer. It's like running wide on the exit of the corner. Taking a bit too much curb there. Be very, very careful with track limits. Running a bit wide on exit as well. Turn 15 and across the line for another lap. 8 minutes to go. Gap is now still around 1.5 seconds. Has Tony got anything more in the tank, as it were? Slight lock up from Westy ahead, feeling the pressure. He goes wide, but keeps momentum. Hits the dirt, drags him off the track. We're now within 0.8 of a second. Westy making a few mistakes. Talviti running a little bit wide at the chicane. But we're now under a second. 7 minutes to go. Westy was able to pull out a little bit at the last part of this lap. Still, Talviti gets closer and closer. He is pushing on. Oversteer coming out of the final turn. There's a lap car just ahead of Westy. He may be able to get past just before the braking zone of 5. Keeping it tidy in turn 5. No dramas running wide on exit. I believe that is 5th place of Ken Jagger ahead. It just depends where Westy is going to catch him. What, 0.7 of a second between first and second. He's going to catch him between 14 and 15. Ken Jagger spins out the way. Fortunate for Westy, but unfortunate for Jagger. Westy taking a little bit too much curb through his final complex of corners. Just over 5 minutes to go. The gap is now around a second. Tony able to keep a really tight line through some of these turns. It looks like he has a lot more grip. As I say that, he does run a little bit wide. Out of 4. Struggling to keep the nose in for 5. 5 minutes to go, coming towards the downhill chicane. Bumping over the curbs. Is that as close as Tony can get? Is there problems with a little bit of aero push as soon as he gets close to the car in front? Looks all very calm in the cockpit. Just over 4 minutes to go as we start coming to the end of this lap. Start another. He's able to keep the nose in. Loads of oversteer. Trying to get on the power as quick as possible. Gap now risen to about 1.5 seconds. As Tony decided that second place is enough. Looks like he is dropping back. I don't know if this is a technical problem. Or maybe... Tony is slowing. Is he out of fuel? Or is it engine temperatures? He is safe in second place. But Tony did seem to suddenly slow. He may have overdone the fuel calculations with running boost. And Tony pits. This may be a splash and dash. It looks like with just under 3 minutes to go, Westy has been let off the hook. Tony pits from second place. He is safe for second place. That car behind is a lap down. It does look like he's going very slowly into the... Engine is still running. So I'm wondering whether problems with fuel management perhaps. Robin Taylor in third, closing, but he's still 60 seconds behind Tony. And Tony is already out the pits, so he's not going to lose second place. So drama at the end of this race. Talviti got within 1 second of Westy in front, but couldn't quite get any closer. It did look like there might have been problems with fuel efficiency, perhaps. So with 1 minute 20 on the clock, this should be Westy coming up to the end of the lap, putting a lap on Ed Jones. In fact, this is turn 5. So dependent on what Westy wants to do, whether he wants to do another lap, this might be his last lap. He was able to take the lead in turn 1 around poleman Talviti and hasn't really looked back. He pulled out a 5 to 6 second lead and it stayed there for much of the race until the final 20 minutes or so. I mean, Talviti put up a great fight to close within 1 second, but Westy was able to hold him off. Can't imagine he had much tyres left. So we drop across the line. I believe we are going for one more lap. Across the line with about 1 second to go. So Westy leads on his last lap. Talviti taking a pit stop in second. But safely out in second, because Robin Taylor is still 55 seconds up the road. Solid drive from Robin Taylor. Championship leader. He still will remain in the championship lead at the end of this race. As we see second place. Is this Tony out of fuel? Well, because we're going an extra lap, I believe Tony doesn't need to do, or doesn't have enough fuel for an extra lap. As we see Westy coming across the line in first place. Talviti in second. That must be a calculation error. We just didn't want to do an extra lap, so he waited for the leader to come past. Robin Taylor coming in round the last part of the lap, turns 14 and 15. To take third place. Fourth place has already finished, I believe. Unless Ed Jones is out of fuel. He was lapped, so... That's Ken Jagger coming through the first few turns in 5th. And then Barrett Eriksson will no doubt come through the final few corners to take 6th place. And there we have it. 60 minutes at Barber Motorsports Park. Nick Westy grabs the win. Tony Talviti is second. Robin Taylor gets third. Ed Jones in fourth. Ken Jagger in fifth. Barrett Ericsson in sixth. Drivers were able to gain a lot of championship points because of a low number of drivers today. So this was the third round. Having a look at the points situation, if I got the points correct, so it was 40 points for Nick Westy, 36 for Tony. Robin Taylor will get 33. Ed Jones gets 30. Ken Jagger gets 28. Barrett Ericsson gets 26. Now, in terms of the championship, Robin Taylor still retains the championship on 106. Nick Westy is now in second place with 100 points. So the championship is tightening up a little. At the top end, now we've passed the half distance. Barrett Ericsson in third with 88. Ed Jones in fourth with 82. Tony Talviti, with only been here for 2 rounds, has now got 76 points. Ken Jagger is in sixth place. Bjorn Hagman, who was not present today, has 63. Neither was Rob Milliken, who has 52 points. Thomas Johansson had some technical problems with 28 points. Philip Pitchler was not present today with 20 points. And we have Carl Struhl in 11th place in the championship with 18 points. So, we are back here in 2 weeks' time for the next round of the Porsche 935 USA Cup for a very similar track. The twists and turns of Laguna Seca, very similar to Barber Motorsports Park. It's going to be very, very difficult to pass. Not a lot of straights on Laguna Seca. But hopefully you can join us then for what will be the latter half of this season. Let's hope that Robin Taylor can keep it together, or does his teammate Nick Westy have something for him? So thanks for joining us for this broadcast for the Porsche 935 USA Cup with Sim Racing Online, and we'll see you in 2 weeks' time.